Ma'am, do you want to put this on the same card as the last time? I blinked, confused. The cashier at the jewelry store smiled politely, holding out a sleek black credit card. My husband's name was on it. Except I had never been to this store before. I adjusted my grip on the small velvet box in my hands, the anniversary gift I had just picked out for my husband Daniel. I think there's a mistake, I said hesitantly. This isn't my card. The cashier frowned. Are you sure? Mr. Callahan used this card for the necklace last month. The one for Lisa. Lisa? My fingers tightened around the box. Right. Of course, I'll just check with him. I forced a smile, paid with my own card, and walked out of the store, my heart hammering. Lisa. The name repeated in my head like a broken record. I had never heard him mention Elisa before. But maybe it was a coworker, a distant relative. Still, something didn't feel right. That night I waited until Daniel was asleep. Then for the first time in 10 years of marriage, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through his emails. At first I found nothing unusual. Work memos, travel confirmations, dinner reservations. But then I found a folder labeled Household Expenses. And inside, I saw something that made my breath catch in my throat. A mortgage payment, not for our house. I sat there in the dark, my fingers shaking as I clicked through more files. My mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Something was very, very wrong. And I was about to find out exactly what. I sat frozen in front of my laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating my face in the dark bedroom. The mortgage payment sat there, undeniable. A house. A house I didn't know about. My heart pounded as I clicked on the transaction details. The payments had been going out for years. Not a recent purchase. Not some investment I had forgotten about. This was ongoing. I swallowed hard and my hands trembling. Who was living there? The logical side of my brain tried to reason through it. Maybe Daniel had invested in real estate. Maybe it was a rental property. But then I saw it. The address. I copied it, opened Google Maps, and pasted it into the search bar. Within seconds, a street view image loaded. A quiet suburban house, a well-maintained lawn, a porch swing. It looked lived in. I zoomed in. A child's bicycle leaned against the front steps. Potted plants lined the windowsill. I stared at it, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Daniel had never mentioned this place. Never talked about buying a second home. But this wasn't just some empty investment property. This was a home. And someone was living in it. A sinking feeling settled deep in my gut. My hands moved on autopilot as we scrolled through more bank transactions. Grocery stores, restaurants, clothing stores, children's clothing stores. My stomach twisted. I clicked on his email inbox again, searching for anything that could explain this. And then I found it. An email receipt from a boutique store, a gold necklace engraved with a name, Lisa. Signs I had missed my head spun as I tried to piece everything together. Daniel had always been busy. His job required travel, long meetings, late nights. He had always been good at balancing work and home life. Or so I thought. But now, looking back, I saw the cracks. The weekend trips that always seemed to come up last minute. The business dinners that never had receipts. The phone calls he would take outside, away from me. Even the way he sometimes looked at his phone and smiled. Not the way a man smiles at work emails. I had ignored it, brushed it off as normal. Because why would I ever suspect him? We had been together for 10 years. He chose me. He promised me a future. But now, I wasn't so sure. The more I thought about it, the more the memories resurfaced. The times he had left for business trips, but returned home with no stories to tell. The times he had forgotten his wedding ring at home. The times he had left early on Sunday mornings for a quick work meeting. I had trusted him blindly, and he had counted on that. But he had underestimated me. The breaking point. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I copied the address and pulled up my GPS. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my keys, throwing on a jacket. The house was only 45 minutes away. I barely remembered the drive. My mind replayed the same thoughts over and over. Who was Lisa? Why was Daniel paying for another house? And more importantly, what would I find when I got there? As I pulled onto the quiet suburban street, my stomach felt like it was in knots. The house was right there, so normal, so perfect looking that for a brief moment I almost convinced myself that I had imagined it all. Then I saw him. Daniel. Stepping out of the front door, grinning as he wrapped an arm around a woman I had never seen before. She was beautiful. Dark hair, soft features, the kind of elegance that didn't need effort. She was wearing the necklace. The one with her name engraved on it. Lisa. But it wasn't just the way he held her. It was the way he looked at her. A look of pure joy. The kind of happiness I hadn't seen on his face in years. He laughed as he pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, completely unaware that I was watching. And then, as if the final blow hadn't landed yet, 2 little boys burst through the front door. They ran straight into his arms. Daniel scooped one of them up effortlessly, tossing him in the air before catching him, his face lighting up with genuine love and pride. The boy giggled and clung to him, his small hands grasping at Danielle's shirt like he had done this 1,000 times before. Like this was normal, like Daniel was their father. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. This wasn't a mistress, this wasn't just an affair. This was a family. His other family. I watched in stunned silence as Daniel kneeled down, ruffling the other boy's hair, his expression soft and full of affection. My husband, the man I thought I knew, was a father. And I wasn't his only wife. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. I wanted to scream, to storm out of my car and demand answers, but I didn't, because in that moment I realized something. Daniel had lied to me for years. If I wanted to make him pay, I couldn't let my emotions take over. I needed a plan. And he was about to learn that he had married the wrong woman to mess with. Lisa was still shaking as she took another step back, her breath shallow and uneven. The reality of the situation was sinking in, and I could see the heartbreak tearing through her. She had no idea. Just like me, she'd spent years believing in Daniel's lies. But while she stood there reeling, trying to piece together the destruction of her world, I'd already moved past the heartbreak. I was here for justice. Daniel's eyes darted back to me, then to Lisa, then to the crowd that had started to form near the driveway. Neighbors had stepped outside, curious about the commotion. I caught a few whispering amongst themselves, pointing in our direction. One of them, an older woman, narrowed her eyes at me as if she recognized me, but not from this house. Something inside me clicked. I turned toward her. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice steady. "Do you know who I am?" The woman hesitated before stepping forward. She looked between Daniel and Lisa before her gaze settled on me. "You're Daniel's wife," she said slowly. Lisa gasped. Daniel's entire body stiffened. I tilted my head. "His wife?" I echoed, playing along. "Not his ex-wife?" The woman frowned. "No, honey, he never mentioned an ex-wife. He always said he was still married, but he—" She suddenly looked horrified as a realization hit her. "Oh my God." Lisa's knees nearly buckled. She gripped the front porch railing like she needed it to hold herself up. Daniel snapped. "You need to stop this, Sophie!" he hissed through clenched teeth. "This isn't fair." "Fair?" I let out a cold laugh. "Oh, you want to talk about fair?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a stack of papers. Documents, receipts, proof. Lisa's hands trembled as she reached for them, flipping through the pages with wide eyes. She stopped at one and let out a strangled sob. I peered over her shoulder. It was a birth certificate. Father's name, Daniel Callahan. I watched the last shred of doubt leave her eyes. She looked up at him, her entire body shaking with fury. "How could you?" Her voice cracked. Daniel's hands went up in desperation. "Lisa, please. I was going to tell you. I just needed time." "Time?" she spat. "Time for what, Daniel?" "To keep lying? To keep living 2 lives?" He turned to me now, his voice desperate. "Sophie, listen!" "No," I cut him off. "You listen." His jaw clenched, panic flashing in his eyes. He was cornered. He had nothing left to stand on. But still, like the coward he was, he tried to weasel his way out. "I did this for both of you," he started, his voice filled with the same manipulative charm he always used when trying to talk his way out of trouble. "I never wanted to hurt anyone. I wanted to make sure you both had good lives. I was trying to be responsible." Lisa let out a hollow laugh, pure disbelief on her face. I narrowed my eyes. "So you were just... what? Providing for both of us, like some kind of saint?" He nodded quickly. "Yes, exactly. I love you both." His voice cracked as he turned back to Lisa. I love you, Lisa. But I also love Sophie. I couldn't just choose between you two. Lisa looked disgusted. I stepped forward, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. So you're telling me you just decided to keep two families? To lie to both of us for years? To make sure you had a backup plan in case one of us left? His eyes darted away, guilt flickering across his face. I was afraid of losing everything, he admitted. Lisa's breath hitched. So instead of being a decent human being, you just kept up the lies? Daniel, you watched me give birth to your children while knowing you had a whole wife somewhere else. Daniel ran a frustrated hand through his hair. It's not that simple. You don't understand what it's like to what? I cut him off, my voice sharp. To lie? To cheat? To treat the people who love you like they're nothing more than options? He opened his mouth, but I didn't give him the chance to continue. I turned to Lisa. Are you done with him? Her expression hardened. Completely. I smirked. Good, because I'm about to make sure he gets exactly what he deserves. Daniel paled. Sophie, please, let's just talk, okay? Privately. We don't have to involve lawyers. Oh, but we do, I interrupted. I pulled out another folder and slapped it against his chest. He barely caught it in time, his hands fumbling to open it. His face drained of color. Inside was everything. Bank statements, his fraudulent transfers, the misuse of our shared finances for his secret life, all neatly documented, ready for court. You spent our money on them, I said, my voice ice cold. And now I'm going to take back everything you stole from me. Lisa glanced at the papers and scoffed. I should sue you too, you lying piece of... Daniel snapped. You can't do this to me! His voice rose, panic taking over. Sophie, I'll lose everything. My job, my assets. I smiled. Yes, you will. He staggered back like he had just been punched. You? You really hate me that much? I tilted my head. No, Daniel, I just finally see you for who you really are. Lisa crossed her arms. And so does everyone else. I turned on my heel, feeling the weight of 10 years of betrayal finally lift off my shoulders. Lisa followed. We didn't need to say anything more. Behind us, Daniel stood there, completely and utterly alone. The legal battle that followed was nothing short of brutal. I wasn't just walking away from Daniel. I was taking him down. I handed every piece of evidence I had gathered to my lawyer, who wasted no time in building an airtight case against him. Fraud, misappropriation of marital assets, deception. There wasn't a single angle where he could defend himself. Daniel tried to fight it at first. He pleaded, bargained, threatened. He showed up at my house unannounced, pounding on the door late at night. Sophie, we don't have to do this. His voice was hoarse, desperate. We can fix this. Please, just talk to me. I didn't answer. I simply watched through the peephole as he slumped against the door, running a hand through his hair in frustration, the same way he had looked when he was caught lying to my face. Days turned into weeks, and reality began closing in on him. Lisa had cut off all contact. She filed for full custody of their kids, refusing to let him anywhere near them. His business began to crumble. Word had spread about his double life, and clients were jumping ship. And then came the court hearing. He sat across from me at the long table, his suit crisp, but his face hollow and tired. The weight of everything he had done was written all over him. But when the judge read the terms of the divorce settlement, his entire body went rigid. I had won. 50% of our assets were legally mine. The house, the savings, the investments, half of everything he had built, gone in an instant. And because of his financial misconduct, he was ordered to pay additional restitution. Daniel stared at the judge in stunned silence like he had been struck by a lightning. This can't be happening, he muttered, shaking his head. He turned to me, his voice cracking. Sophie, please. I met his eyes, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no heartbreak, no regret, just freedom. You did this to yourself, I said, my voice steady. He clenched his jaw, his hands tightening into fists before he exhaled shakily, slumping back in his chair. The realization had finally settled in. He had lost. The aftermath was even worse for him. His business collapsed completely. His reputation was in ruins, his career unsalvageable. He lost everything. One evening months later, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. Sophie? The voice on the other end was hoarse, broken. It took me a second to even recognize it. Daniel. I leaned back against the couch, listening as he let out a shaky breath. I lost everything, he whispered. I don't know what to do. There was silence. Then without another word, I hung up. I'd spent 10 years living in his shadow, believing in a love that was never real. But now, I was finally free. Daniel had thought he could have 2 lives, 2 wives, 2 families, but in the end, he lost both. And as for Daniel, his life was nothing like it had been before. Without his business, he struggled to find steady work. His name had been dragged through the mud, and no reputable company wanted to associate with him. The man who had once lived in luxury, who had built an empire on lies, was now barely getting by. Lisa had moved away with the kids. She never let him see them again. He tried, of course. He sent letters, called from different numbers, even showed up once at their new home, only to be turned away at the door. His sons no longer remembered him as the loving father he had once pretended to be. He had gone from having everything to having nothing. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he was living in a tiny, run-down apartment on the outskirts of town. No friends, no family, no career, just a man drowning in his own regrets. Sometimes I wondered if he ever sat in that apartment at night, staring at the walls, replaying every choice that led him here. If he ever thought about what he had lost, if he ever truly understood the depth of his betrayal, or if he simply wallowed in the consequences. I never reached out. I never checked in. His fate wasn't my concern anymore. I had a new life, a better one, and I was never going to let a man like Daniel take another second of it. Looking back, I realized that the hardest part wasn't losing Daniel. It was losing the illusion of the life I thought we had built together. The love, the trust, the future I'd envisioned. It had all been a lie, carefully crafted by a man who thought he could have it all without consequence. But life doesn't work that way. For the first time in a long time, I was free. No more waiting for late-night phone calls that never came. No more worrying if his business trips were really just that. No more feeling like I was second-guessing myself in a marriage that, in reality, had already been broken long before I discovered the truth. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. The settlement gave me financial security, but more importantly, it gave me closure. I moved into a new home, started focusing on my own dreams, reconnected with old friends, and even started dating again, something I never thought I'd be ready for. And for the first time in years, I laughed without feeling like there was a weight on my chest. Daniel, on the other hand, had nothing. The last I heard, he had tried to start a business again, but no one wanted to work with him. His reputation was too far gone, his past mistakes following him like a shadow he could never outrun. Lisa had completely disappeared from his life, along with his kids. He had spent years playing with people's lives, treating love like it was a game, but in the end, he was the only one who lost. One day, out of curiosity, I searched his name online. There was no sign of the successful businessman he used to be. No updates, no major projects, nothing. Just a few old articles about his downfall and a disheveled LinkedIn profile that hadn't been updated in years. I closed my laptop and smiled to myself. I didn't need to check on him again. I had moved on, and I had won. Moral of the story: betrayal has consequences, no matter how carefully the lies are built. Daniel thought he could live a double life forever, that he could keep 2 families in the dark and continue playing the role of the devoted husband to both women. But the truth has a way of revealing itself, and when it does, there is no escape. Sophie's story is a testament to self-respect and resilience. She could have fallen apart, let the betrayal consume her, but instead, she took back her power. She refused to let his lies define her, and in doing so, she didn't just walk away, she walked away stronger. Daniel thought he could have everything, but in the end, he lost both women, both families, and everything he built his life around. Lies may work for a while, but the truth always wins. And sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, it isn't dramatic. It's simply moving on, thriving, and letting the people who betrayed you watch from the sidelines as you build a life without them.